and you end up with just a warehouse full of stuff that you just can't get rid of. It's
Well,
crazy.
one thing I can tell you from experience is if you buy like Fruit of the Loom swag, people don't want to wear it.
No, you've got
If
to
you
go
buy,
support that.
we bought something like in Canberry ID. We bought something. I think it was like Columbus or Patagonia or something like that, and that went like hotcakes. But almost everything we bought was like really cheap. That was me
Doesn't
being
work.
just
Yeah,
being cheap.
doesn't work. I think if you can go cheap, you want to buy something that is literally of use, like a cap or something, or a pair of gloves or whatnot, or t-shirt.
I
People have got enough of.
ISIM stuff is just brilliant. See, if you want great swag, go hang around the ISIM's booth at like any of the events like Unleash or whatever. You'll get Nike baseball caps, you'll get Patagonia stuff, you'll get like really, really good stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. Brain food swag obviously needs to happen. Hasn't happened for years, even though I promise it. So maybe 2024 needs to be the moment. Anyway, folks, welcome to Brain Food Live on Air. It is episode 238. It is the final episode of the year with you, Adam and Ebit. I came on here with a massive smile. Also, Adam did, because I think we're basically knackered. We've had like a massive session. Don't know how you feel about it, Adam, but I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm looking forward to this chat, obviously, but good to have a break. Good for us to, at least 2 weeks where nothing's happening. So yeah, it's been a big overhaul.
I feel like a marathon runner who's, or no, I feel like a runner who's doing a marathon but hasn't quite trained for it properly. Like I can get round, but the last 5 miles, I'm pretty much crawling.
Yeah, it's painful. I mean, don't get me wrong, guys. This is great to have a chat with you, but it's almost like at the end, you can just feel it. It's like really on top of us. So done a massive amount of programming, probably about 45, 47 odd shows, something like that. We'll do a similar brunch next year. So we've only got a couple of weeks break, but hopefully I'll give you a bit more spell, Adam, as a co-host. I don't want to wear you out, mate. But anyway, welcome everybody. Great to see you. Today we're going to do the final of the year in review look back series. We're going to talk economy, labor market, and jobs, particularly as it pertains to recruiters. We've got RPO people, we've got agency people, we've got in-house recruitment people. So trying to cover all of the gamut of the people that do recruiting. Just have a look back to see what this year has been all about. So folks, let's make sure that you can hear and see me and Adam okay. So if you've heard our dialogue and you can hear and see us okay, let us know in the chat. In the chat stream on Crowdcast, if you're watching it here. If you're watching it on any of these Crowdcasts, which I know that Adam, you are live streaming this. Emma, you're also doing the same. Rob Walker, I think Neil as well. You're all live streaming on LinkedIn. If you're watching it on any of those LinkedIns, let me know in the comment thread whether you can hear and see me okay. Hopefully we are going live in those places. Let me just quickly check. Yes, we are. We are going live. I've only failed doing that twice this year, so it's like forgivable, right? Two mistakes out of 45. It's all right. Anyway, before we kick off, let's have to thank our sponsors every week, folks. This year we haven't failed to get a sponsor in. Really helped us supporting this show, and of course this week, seeing us into the new year, it is actually Poetry. Poetry are sponsoring the show. The recruitment enablement out of the box. So Adam Gordon, you are the founder of this company. Tell us all about it, man.
Yeah, I really like that actually. You completely ad-libbed some description of my company's like value proposition and described it as recruiter enablement out of the box. And that's a really good description. So Poetry is a recruiter enablement workspace that includes 28 inbuilt native solutions for recruitment marketing, recruitment operations, recruiter learning, and tools. Things like facilities for managing and building your social media posts, social media outreach messaging, Boolean strings, job adverts, libraries for policies and processes and things like that, all powered by generative AI. So if your recruiters are looking for inspiration, then they can get it really easily. This is a pretty informed audience that turns up for here. So I'll just explain, we've done a very, very large amount of prompt engineering in the background so that a recruiter just fills in simple forms, and that sends very, very detailed prompts into the generative AI engine that we use to return back pretty close to what the recruiter is looking for. And you can put in lots of marketing templates that are centrally controlled as well, so that what the recruiter gets back is very close to what's needed. The first user is free forever at www.poetryhr.com. Sign up, you'll get access. You can scout out the workspace and determine which of the 28 solutions you're going to start with first. This, I believe, is as important to your team's success as your applicant tracking system, and looking forward to a great 2024 of recruiter enablement.
There we go. Longest monologue ever from Adam. But you know what? I think very, very interesting as well. Everyone has got to get more efficient. There's no question that's going to be the case in 2024. And this is your kind of route in. So do check it out. Adam, by the way, I don't mean to sort of tell you about your business, of course. Very generous that you've got like a one user for free. But I don't know, have a think about something you could offer as a new year thing, because if we're back as you as a sponsor in 2024, maybe always attractive to try and, give people additional incentive. So check it out, folks. Okay, let's get on with this.
I will not put the prices up in 2024. That's your additional incentive.
You should actually threaten to put the prices up in 2024 unless you sign up. Within a certain time frame. Let's create some urgency here. All right, listen, let's go. Let's review the newsletter, mate. Did you read it, fella? And if so, what was interesting from last week?
Yeah, I did. Please prompt me on this is the last one, because the last one is a nice tie-in with the subject of the Recruiting Brainfood today, so I don't want to miss it. I want to talk about the Harvard Business Review article about how generative AI is going to influence the way that we design jobs. We're going to be redesigning processes in many jobs. We're going to be redesigning workflows, and really interesting research that they included in there. So they looked at something like 30 different industries, and they determined that 44% of working hours across all industries had the potential to be disrupted by generative AI, which had a high of 72% in banking. 72% of hours worked in banking have the potential to be disrupted by generative AI. Insurance was shortly behind that. Capital markets was shortly behind that. So basically the financial services area, very high potential to be disrupted in terms of most jobs in there. It's pretty much all white collar jobs in there, isn't it? So yep. I guess that's probably why. They also segmented it. We get a bit confused in recruitment sometimes when we talk about sectors, and when we actually mean professions or job categories. But anyway, they also segmented it according to job categories, and they found that there was one job category. They didn't actually say what it was, I don't think, but there was one job category where as much as 63% of the actual work in that job could be disrupted by generative AI. And there was 5 job categories where it was higher than 50%, which I thought was interesting. They broke it down even further into they didn't give the results on this, but they did do the research into over 19,000 different tasks, and found that more than half had the ability, there was the potential for more than half of those tasks to unleash newfound creativity and new solutions as a result of generative AI. So I know we talk about Gen AI a lot in here. You include it a lot in the newsletter, but that's because it has got a massive impact on jobs and therefore on recruiting.
Yeah, 100%. It's massively, massively important. If jobs are going to change, obviously they are, then obviously, firstly, the sort of size of market might change, and our focus in terms of the types of skills we're recruiting for will change. Because if previously, we were recruiting for this type of skill set, and we're now understanding that AI might disrupt this significantly, this type of skill set we'd previously recruited for, then presumably that's going to shrink in terms of the focus for what we're doing. So we need to guide companies towards the skill sets that cannot be disrupted by AI. Now, what I like particularly about this article is not only their research, because we've seen quite a few of these, and it's a bit doom and gloom and all this kind of stuff, but these guys actually come up with a very positive slant because they give you a framework to do the redesign in such a way that you could basically unpack your job, rebuild it in an AI-proof way. And I thought, you know what, that's actually one of the first examples where I've seen someone actually propose a way in which you could redesign a job so it takes advantage of AI and doesn't actually get run over by it. So yeah, I wonder what your thoughts are on that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it is written in a way. It's written in a way which is, here's great news, rather than what some people are going, which is, oh no, generative AI is terrible. It produces wrong information. We need to stop using it because they're just stuck in what they're doing and can't adapt. So this is actually written in a very, no, this is good news for everybody kind of tone.
It's good news, but we have to action. You know, something I'm going to try and do for 2024 as well, where you're looking at basically recruitment work, analyzing it on a task level. What is it you're doing in terms of tasks? How much time are you spending on those tasks? And then you think about, okay, how much can AI actually disrupt this task or support this task? In which case, you've got to aggressively apply it to those places and then repackage the job such that it doesn't actually contain overly much stuff that can be done by AI, because otherwise your job's going to shrink. So I think they've got a very clear way to do it. It's not quite a framework, but it's at least a stepping stone toward a framework. And yeah, definitely worth a read. I've shared it in the chat stream there. Make yourself, avail yourself to that post. Very digestible. Okay, give us a couple more, mate.
Okay, Slack's workforce index. I've got mixed thoughts about this, right? And I'll explain why in a minute. And I know I'm in danger of getting cancelled for what I'm about to say. So those who log off at the end of the working day apparently register 20% higher productivity than those people that are like working beyond their scheduled hours. Is that surprising to me? It's probably not surprising to me, because if I think about my least productive work, it was when I was employed and when I was doing like crazy hours. And actually, most of the stuff I was doing, like for the 10 years that I was employed by other people, I wasn't that productive, to be honest. But there was a lot of presenteeism. I was in the office a lot. I was in communication with people a lot. But actually, it probably wasn't as productive as it could have been had I been a lot more focused. Another aspect to this, which I think is that specific point, which is quite important, is those who work longer hours register more than 2 times the amount of work-related stress and burnout, and 70% less satisfaction with their working circumstances. I wonder if the problem that what they're asked to be doing, in which case it could be a culture issue, or is it that they really need some better skills around being productive? You know, making time for breaks improves productivity. And then they talk about, this is Slack writing this, they talk about the Goldilocks zone. I don't quite understand what Goldilocks has got to do with it, but they're saying that the ideal amount of like focus time, which I guess means like individual getting on with stuff time, is 4 hours, and that 2 hours per day, that's the tipping point where people start to feel overburdened with meetings. I can't remember the last time I did less than about 4 hours of meetings a day. It's almost never. I'm actually probably going to have some of that time over Christmas, but that's not normal. Is that normal for people?
Not normal. You're not a normal person though, because you're an owner manager of a tech startup. So
no, I have worked for other companies though. In fact, I worked for other companies quite recently, and people were not doing 2 hours or less of meetings. That just was not happening at all. Just one last point about this, which really stood out to me. Only 1 out of 4 workers agreed that the time between 3 and 6 p.m. was highly productive. Now, this is where I'm in danger of getting cancelled. What the hell are you doing if you're not productive between those hours? I mean, fine, if your day's meant to finish at 5 o'clock, fine, 5 o'clock, whatever. But between 3 and 5, you're unproductive? I mean, get fit for work. Really, get fit for work. If you're not capable of doing a full day's work, you need to get fit for work.
All right, so you're basically calling them all for slovenly, overweight slobs
I'm not
with
commenting on anybody's weight or anything like
energy problems. Yeah, but that was what you had in your mind. But I tell you what though, I do get like the post lunch kind of comatose. It's firstly, what are you eating for lunch? That's the
have an
first.
espresso.
Yeah. You got to think. You got to rethink the size of your lunch. I had a massive sandwich this lunchtime. Total mistake. Have 2 eggs and a bit of salad, mate. That'll sort you out. And you'll fly through. So your consumption at lunch, I think, basically kills your productivity. But I think what was interesting here, I mean, obviously productivity is a very difficult thing to manage, and I believe Slack kind of went with the self-reported productivity angle, which of course everyone's going to self-report. My productivity is obviously poorer if I work harder. That's generally what people would like to report, because they want to try and suppress the amount of hours they're meant to work. So anyway, I'm not entirely trustful of how they measure productivity, even though overall I've got a sympathy with the fact that no one can sit there in front of a computer for 10 hours solidly and presume to be productive. That's not the case. I think you are working in blocks. And one thing I find, Coke is not going to help you. No.
The caffeine in that is, and Bob said it as well, a large Diet Coke completely.
No. I don't know how Diet Coke has suddenly turned into some sort of miracle drink. I mean, come on, guys, it's definitely bad for you. Listen, there's all kind. We should do a food show actually. How to get high energy for 2024? Get some nutritionists in to help us. I'm pretty certain they're not going to recommend Coke Zero or any form of Coke. But yeah. Really interesting report. Go and dive into it. Have a look. See, I think lots to think about in terms of management of your own time. Just want to highlight something Bob mentioned, which is really important. Like, manage your energy, not manage your time. It's like, if you're feeling your energy is low, go and do something. Typically, do something physical. If it's just taking a walk or taking a break, better than just sitting there doing nothing and thinking you're doing something. 15-minute brief walk. That's Angie. Quite correct. Do some sit-ups, press-ups, whatever it is. Just shake yourself out, and you'll be fine. And then it's like, okay, when are you in the zone? And when you're in the zone, you got to just ignore interrupts. That's one thing I've learned is, if you're sitting there on multiple apps and looking at multiple screens, you're going to get buzzed every 2 minutes, in which case your brain's distracted and you just reset from zero again. So you got to have alone time doing on your own stuff without interrupt, even if it means turning off the internet. I wonder whether people think that's crazy, but literally go Wi-Fi free. If you've got a document to do, just do that, and you'll find you'll do it in like less than half the time. So lots of things we could try. But anyway, really interesting to read. Go and check it out. Okay, one more before we get into this talk, Adam.
Right, Glassdoor's workplace trends. It's quite economicsy, so that's why I thought it was an interesting segue. In next year will be the tipping point where there's more Gen Zs than Boomers. I think they said more Zoomers than Boomers. They've got quite dramatic subject headings for the different points that they've made in this. Is that interesting? I don't know. Don't know if it's interesting or not, but time moves on, I guess. Wages are going to keep going up, but benefits are going to erode, apparently. So organizations are going to be less like in the way of flexible benefits and pensions and
with this me that's gone.
That is because companies are going to need less skilled workers, so less like software developers, for example, than they did, or it's going to cool off, should I say? They're suggesting morale is going to remain low. I think they called it a layoff long shadow. So morale is going to be low in the workplace because of a hangover, I guess, from like reduction in force, especially in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good read. I mean, people should just check it out. Usually when you see sort of these types of surveys, you get basically like seven assorted cliches that you think, yeah, right, I've read this like for 100th time. But But Glassdoor have actually come up with some fairly unique angles, I think, on things that were interesting. And I think some of the signposting they're putting towards next year is quite relevant, particularly how significant layoffs are in terms of damaging the morale of the employees that you keep. So this is very, very important. And there's a long tail of this. The changes on sort of the interest on equity, for instance, and whether people want more cash, etc. All of these things are really interesting for us to absorb, because if we're going to be recruiting in 2024, it kind of makes sense to go with the zeitgeist. And by the way, the generational aspect, I think, will become increasingly more important as we move forward year on year. And the reason why this is important is quite simply there are like significant value differences between different age groups. And we're talking about diversity and inclusion, for instance. We're talking about politics within the workplace. We're talking about, should CEOs be, demonstrate, wider political concerns, social concerns, etc. All of these things differ according to your generational sort of grouping, more or less. Obviously, with caveat, but there is some discernible differences. So if we're recruiting, we need to manage a multi-generational workforce. That's something we've never done before. Not 5 generations. I think that's going to happen next year onwards, where we have, not 4 but 5 generations in the workforce. Even further, you look at things like extension of the retirement age and stuff like this. It's evident that we're going to end up having a much more age diverse workforce, in which case, what does that mean in terms of job design? What does that mean in terms of performance management? Right now, we design the job without thinking about a person's life circumstances. But guess what? When I'm like 75, I'd probably not want to work a 50-hour week. But if I'm 25, I'd be blasting through, no problem. So, but we don't even think about this. So
just had one more quick one that was in that, which was around the premium that people attach to human interactions. As we can now, and generative AI, they've said, it accelerated this, so we can get more information more easily through chatbots and generative AI and whatever. Actually, people place a higher and higher premium on the ability to talk to an individual. And I think that's a trend we're going to see in recruiting. So there's a company in the US called Vet, which I'm really interested in. And what they do is they have a panel of individuals who get buzzed to say somebody just applied for that job. And then they immediately get on the phone and say, "Hey, Hung, thanks for applying for the job. Here's the process. Can I ask you any, have you got any questions that I can help you with or whatever?" Massively more, engaged with the job as a result, the individuals. So I think that we might see some really interesting kind of almost analog type approaches coming back into recruiting as companies want to stand out.
I don't know whether you saw when Becky Lee was on the show a couple of weeks ago for EY, and that's exactly what they're doing. She's calling it recruitment vintage, going back to in-person interviews, going back to high analog processes. In sort of that scenario, it was kind of an antidote against AI usage from candidates. But you can see this is going to be a differentiator. If we get hyper efficient, with all of the automation, all of the technology, that's going to help us move forward, all well and good. But one way to differentiate is, of course, simply do different from everyone else. And I think at the right time, we are going to want to speak to a human being. Whether that's at the beginning of the process, middle of the process, end of the process, I don't know. But I do think it will mean that people with personalities will succeed. And I mean, almost like people with like marginal personalities, I think will succeed even more. I want to be careful with my language here, but people who are very different, I think will obviously very human compared to everyone else who's in the middle, very vanilla. I think we're going to begin to, is this a human being or not? Is this a AI generation? We distrust the vanilla normal and start trusting the people a little bit that have always been a little bit off the wall. So yeah, it's going to be good for the weird ones, I think. Anyway, let's get on with this. People have been waiting long enough. Let's give you a quick review of the year, Adam, before getting in. I mean, 2023, you've seen it from a big corp perspective. iSIMS then launched, obviously, Poetry. Generally speaking, how are you seeing this year compared to last? What's your view of economy, labor market, and jobs in particular?
Shit show. Arguably, it's a really bad time to be trying to start a new business, doing a different thing that nobody's doing. But the other argument would be it's a good time because nobody's buying very much new things anyway. So you may as well try and change the narrative while they have got like a little bit of time to actually consider different things. I think that recruitment teams who had 50 people at the beginning of the year and are now 35 people are not going to go back to 50 people. That's not going to happen in in-house talent acquisition. I think that they might go back to 40, but the 5 additional people are not going to be recruiters. They're going to be people whose job it is to make sure that everybody else is more productive. And it's been a terrible year for a lot of people, and I wish it hadn't been such a bad year. But obviously, everything I've just said is just complete personal opinion, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the experts say.
Yep, fair enough. I think it's very sectoral, but I do think you mix in the sort of the information you're absorbing everywhere, but also the anecdotal information, the anecdata. It all kind of points in the same direction. We don't want to belabor the point. It's been very, very tough for everybody, and that's the state of play. We'll look into some explanations as to why that is, but let's hear from some of our guests. We're going to bring on Duka first. He's working on our PO side. It's a good example, I think, of that market. It was booming 2 years ago. It was like probably the best place to do recruitment. Let's have a look at what happened in 2023, and we'll just get his perspective on things as we look forward to the year to come as well. There he is. Boom. Let's see if he can come on. I mean, it's been tough, but it's also been a winnowing process. Like all kind of like contracting type situations. The people that survive it are going to basically enter into a marketplace that's been cleaned out, if you like, of the competition to a degree. So it's almost like hanging in there as long as you can. Duka, how are you doing? Wonderful to see you, sir. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Thanks, Han. Hi, Adam. How are you doing? Duke, one of the founders of We Are Keen. We're an embedded recruitment company based in Amsterdam and in beautiful Berlin, and supporting mostly innovative, fast-scaling tech companies and also some larger enterprise. Yeah, that's it, man.
Fantastic to see you, Duka. So, Duka, listen, we've just, obviously, we want to be. We want to be honest, but also not depressing. So how has the year been for you in RPO world? How has it been your different markets? Have you seen differences between Germany and Netherlands, for instance?
Definitely. Yeah, it was just, of course, doing a little bit of thinking what happened last year, and also sort of zoom back to the show we had exactly a year ago, where I actually met up with Sahil from MetaView, which was, to me at least, the first opening of new technology, AI and stuff, and it turned out quite nicely for them. But and I also thought, like, I know we remember to discuss 2022, and like, well, a lot of stuff happened, and what will happen in 2023. I'm not entirely sure what I mentioned, but now I was, of course, trying to rethink what happened in 2023, and it was just like a lot, but at the same time, it was just like, we didn't really go forward a lot, we didn't go down a lot. It was a lot of stuff happened, but it wasn't the best of years for us, to be really frank and honest. But at the same time, it was also interesting to learn, that we could sort of venture into new services, new things with our clients, basically. But it was it was a bit of a bumpy ride this year, 100%. Yeah.
What kind of services proved to be interesting for your customer base, Duka?
Well, what I think, like, when, like what you just mentioned before, is that when we were in the hot seat, right, or in the hot spot basically in 21, 20, everybody was looking for recruiters, and everybody was, I want to have an RPO, come, let's do RPO, and everybody was only thinking about the one aspect of our business, which is we provide you with amazing recruiters when you're scaling up. But they were more or less forgetting, like, when business goes down, you also need to be flexible and scale down with them, right? So the thing that we do and have always been doing in RPO is that we provide additional workforce, recruiters, whatever, and in good times we support you, and when you're going down, then we need to scale down, and then we need to find something else. So I specifically think it's sort of this specialism of bringing on board really good recruiters, well-trained recruiters, in combination with flexibility is something that we've always been doing. But of course, the scope of our services in the great years were really around capacity. We need extra recruiters. We need to hire talent. We need to basically beat our competition in terms of onboarding the right talent. And that sort of transitioned a little bit towards what Adam just mentioned as well. And I don't think I'm mentioning anything new here. That people just need to do more with less, or the same with less, more basically. And that mentioned that sort of the knowledge that we have as a company, not specifically around capacity, also sort of transferred more into technology. So what kind of technology do you see being applied within all the companies that you're active in, and then coming to us, and something that we more or less did in an informal way. Hey, we've seen this company using HR tech tooling around this topic, might also be something for you. Really sort of transitioning this into a proposition as well, consultancy, and even transitioned into implementation as well. So the part of our team is not only working on actually doing the recruiting, but also supporting and guiding companies, hey, around this specific topic, within your recruitment process, we think this is the top 3 that you should be thinking about and looking at, and perhaps even implement. So that's one thing that we did, and a little bit similar to something, because I think a lot of the recruitment teams will also have I don't know, a little bit too much time on their hand, because before they were really busy with recruiting, obviously. Well, that sort of came down a bit. And a lot of, I think, leaders in TA as well had to make up their mind. So are we letting to go people? So we let go a few people. But at the same time, how can we make sure that we are ready for AI next year, whatever, to really make sure that the recruitment technology that we have in place is rock solid, that all the processes are perfect, basically, or that we're finding the newest stuff in town, like MateAfew, whatever. But also in terms of the employer branding, so the attraction part. So how are we going to be set up for success in terms of around our branding, and also within that field, within that service, is something that we've supported companies before a little bit more informal, and that sort of transitioned way more into a solid proposition, basically. So in that sense, it's talent, technology, HR tech, whatever you want to call it, and branding attraction, basically.
Yeah, I think any services provider in our space that has stood still in 2023, whether that's an RPO or a branding agency or a staffing company or a tech provider, anybody that has stood still in 2023 has had a great year and is going to have a good 2024 as a result. And I think probably less than half will have stood still, and most will have gone backwards. So,
no, sorry, Duke. I really like the idea of the informal services RPOs typically provide as kind of gratis, as not the main thing, because you're just supplying capacity, supplying candidates. Suddenly turns into maybe a serviceable revenue stream, because yes, companies actually do need advice on technologies. They do need support and implementation. They don't know how to make selections. They don't know how to actually even train their people to use these technologies. So that's a very interesting segue, and I think it kind of adds value to the value proposition of the business. Because it means that you're more than just a supplier of people. So yeah, very interesting that you kind of discovered that and chipped away at it. Quick question in terms of like sectors and segmentations. Like you guys were working, obviously, 2021. It was all about anybody scaling up, anybody had secured an investment round. Of course, that would be perfect marketplace. We know that investment had crashed. Did you then pivot into different sectors? And if so, which ones seem to be most sort of active or interesting for RPO?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. Like there was no other option basically, right? Because before the phone was ringing 24/7 basically, and all of a sudden that stopped and died. So we definitely more or less pivoted a little bit. Like within tech, we went into, let's say, impact, green tech, social impact, those type of companies where there was still quite a bit of funding ongoing. Earlier stage where a lot of work had to be done around also capacity, but also the other services that I just said. But something that we've been doing from day one, and that's to do a little bit more with my background, that we had always been working with larger financial institutions, the big corporates, where they were not dependent on the funding, they were into a transition or whatever. So they were definitely looking, and the funny thing there was, which we, I guess, sort of utilized a little bit, is that, and that happened quite often, that the bigger corporates, before, they were looking at the really fast scaling tech companies, like, oh my God, they're doing all this cool stuff. So they had almost like a FOMO on let's say on the recruitment side of the bigger companies. And of course, from our perspective, being a boutique embedded RPO company, we were also seeing these guys have been in-house with all these and super fast-scaling unicorn companies. So they're quite eager to get to know us and to work with us on specific parts of their business, either with, I don't know, tech hubs in different countries, I don't know, cross-border recruiting, whatever. So we were able to pick it up, but just to say it was really easy and I could just pick up the phone and start dialing and the business was there. Definitely not. But basically, so to answer your question, so yes, larger enterprises where it's just more stability, longer term, and they were quite eager to get to know basically recruiters from our side who had been in-house with all these super fast scaling companies, and then specifically within, let's say, the tech scene, relatively smaller, but in I guess the green impact tech is how I tend to sort of segment them a little bit basically, but that worked out well. And of course that worked out quite well as well from the internal perspective, because like we can talk about the outside all the time. Of course, we had to deal with our own talent partners as well, who got to get a little bit scared, like seeing all the layoffs and just like the volatility of the market. So it was good for them as well to either go into companies we were a little bit more stable, where we were able to, well, let's say, fix long-term contracts, and simultaneously to jump on that, let's say, the green trend a little bit, that they could support companies which were doing, let's say, for doing stuff for good, right? So that was definitely something that we've benefited from. And but also really bluntly, with some of our partners, they just said, like, we love to have you on board, but we need to talk about the prices. So, well, let's talk, right? Because we need to continue our business and support everybody that's there. So let's go. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so there was sort of price pressure down, of course. You had to negotiate, you had to do all of that stuff. We know that's the reality of it.
Yeah, I think that the mix was really specifically for our business. I'm not too sure how many RPO people who are there, but basically we need to make sure that our workforce is at our client, at our partners the whole time. So the utilization rate needs to be as high as possible. So moving, let's say, I think end of 2020 already, 2022 already, but also moving into 2023, there was pressure because a lot of the RPO companies in Europe, of course, they didn't have assignments for all the people. So they had people on standby, right, which cost a lot of money, which could be dangerous when, of course, there's too many of those. At the same time, when they were talking to clients for projects and or assignments, those assignments were usually a little bit shorter. So moving into, let's say, pre-war time in that sense, 9 months, 12-month contracts off the bat was completely normal and fine. But sort of afterwards, so moving into 2023, those assignments became shorter as well. So when we would be in a pitch with a client, there was price pressure because other companies were willing to drop their prices significantly. At the same time, the projects were shorter, meaning that also the termination periods were shorter, which sort of is in terms of risk in your portfolio of clients, means that the risk goes up quite dramatically. So that was not a nice mix, meaning that me and as a business owner together with my business partners, you're quite internally focused because you're trying to figure out how can we do this all the time, right? And before there was people on assignment, running business, of course, you're trying to add value, have conversation, what else can we do to support you, etc., etc. But that to me meant a lot that we have something in, I'm not sure if it's an English phrase as well, but in Netherlands, you look at your belly button all the time, right? So sometimes
navel gazing.
Sorry?
It's called navel gazing.
That's it. So I thought that quite a lot of the times last year, and something I like doing is this, right? Talking to you, hearing what's going on in the market, what can we do to grow and to have fun and to add value to everybody around us. That was just less the scenario, to be really frank, compared to last year's 100%. Yeah.
No, we have to be candid, and you know what? It's great to see you react as an entrepreneur. Be aggressive when you need to be, and get people utilized is absolutely key. There are a number of people in the marketplace. Obviously, they've crunched down. There's a couple of them have gone out of business. So we know that's going to happen. Those decisions that you're making basically keep you in the ring. And I see it very much like a boxing match. You know, if you're still there at round 9, you got a chance. Just make sure you're still in the ring. And I think that's basically going to suit you well. I do believe that going forward, companies will be really keen to continue working with RPOs for the scalability factor, and so they can offload the risk. So I'm not saying the work is going to be any more pleasant, but I think the work will definitely arrive because.
Sorry to interrupt, Hung, but obviously similar to what Adam was saying before, right? So in-house teams scaled down. I don't believe as well that they're going to go up again, but they could foresee, I don't know, when I go to market, launching a product, whatever, they need additional capacity. They want this capacity to be top notch, basically. So that's definitely, there's room for RPO, embedded, whatever you want to call it. So in that sense, we're quite enthusiastic and optimistic around the possibilities that we will be able to have in the future, and also the service that we will have to provide to the marketplace. And I think it's also worth mentioning in that sense that we were quite exposed in that sort of heavily funded tech scene, of course, right? And there's so much more in this world than only the heavily funded tech scene. So there's definitely more business out there. If you just look at the labor market in the Netherlands, in the economy in the Netherlands, of course, the economy is shit show, not doing well, whatever you want to call it. But in terms of labor shortage, in all almost all segments, right? There's a labor shortage. So in that sense, and let's say I would argue that 95% of the small medium enterprises in the Netherlands, perhaps even on a wider scale, have absolutely zero idea what a solid recruitment strategy looks like, or what kind of processes they could have in place, or what kind of technology they could have in place, and how they can stand out from the crowd with talking and thinking about branding. So I do see there's a lot of potential there, 100% for I think recruitment, but also specifically for our niche, which we're active in.
Yeah, I do agree. And by the way, you're getting a lot of endorsements there. People like Ducker. Of course, we like Ducker. Go and follow this guy on LinkedIn. And by the way, folks, that's exactly what we're going to have to do. Ducker, we're going to say goodbye to you at this point. Wonderful to see you. I will be in Amsterdam next year for sure, multiple times. So I'll let you know. But you have a very good holiday and a great new year as well. And we'll catch up with you soon, man.
Likewise. Thanks, Hung. Thanks, Adam, and good luck with the business, man. Looks good. Like it.
Chris Ducker, thank you.
Yes, ciao.
Cool. Very, very cool. All right, let's do some LinkedIn sharing, folks, because that's something we're going to always do on Brainfood Live. I want to make sure that everyone kind of goes into next year with as many connections on LinkedIn as possible, because you know what? Quantity has a quality all of its own. I'm a big proponent on quantity being better than quality. So take your LinkedIn URL, share it in the chat stream, and make sure you connect with everyone who's done the same. You should walk away with 20, 30, 40 new connections. It's going to reinforce your network into 2024. As Adam mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is kind of an educated audience that pays attention to this show. So the people you're going to be connecting with, I hope, are going to be individuals that be happy to have a prolonged conversation with you. Okay, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, by the way, any of the LinkedIns, please do the same. Just grab your LinkedIn URL, pop it into as a comment, and then anybody you see do the same as a comment, just add them. Usually when this happens, most people will accept, and you just end up with loads more connections. So go ahead and do that. Okay, let's just march on because we haven't got a huge amount of time. Neil Carberry, I'm going to bring you on now, talk about agency side. Where is Neil? Emma, I'll bring you on in a sec. Give me a moment. Neil, where is he? There he is. Okay. Cool. By the way, while Neil's coming on, folks, take a look on the sidebar. Can you just check out the poll? Can you please vote on the poll? I forget to ask people to do this, but check out the poll. Go just start, put a yes, no, maybe. Actually, vote on one of those things. Has your company basically grown or shrank on headcount this year compared to last? Go and give us a vote there. Okay, Neil Carberry, wonderful to see you, sir. Neil, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, hi Hung, hi Adam. Neil Carberry. I'm Chief Executive of the REC, which is the UK's trade and professional body for recruiters, particularly in agency, but also in-house.
And he's a big Jambo as well. Look at that.
Especially for you, Adam.
Jambo, by the way, in case you didn't know, stands for Jam Tarts, Heart of Midlothian Football Club in Edinburgh, which, by the way, I do think have the coolest name in football in any league. But there we go. And by the way, Neil is on TV a lot. You should kind of take a snapshot or a screenshot of this, because Brainfood Live kind of broke Neil into the mainstream. Since that time, he's been on like BBC. He's interviewed with famous people.
I've got to renegotiate the deal on the royalties, Hung, because it's killing me.
No, but seriously, you've been invited to speak. You've been involved in government as well. You've been advising those folks, all of these things. I think as a representative of recruitment agencies in the UK, it's actually great that we're getting this exposure and also getting this input at senior level as well. Looking back on the 2023 as a year for a recruitment agency market in the UK, Neil, what's your general verdict on things, man?
So we can over-index what's happening in tech, right? And tech didn't have a recession in 2020 because people were pouring money into it because of what was going on. And tech's been tough this year, and the other sector that's been particularly tough in recruitment is construction. And construction is always a bit of an economic bellwether. It's not been a great economic year in, frankly, most countries in Western Europe. But actually, if you look beyond those sectors, some sectors are doing all right, actually. But the story is, it's not bad, but it's hard. So the labour markets in Western Europe, particularly in the UK, but in other states too, are really tight. Clients are under pressure, and it's kind of unusual. We're not used to this. When clients' business is under pressure, usually they don't hire. Actually, we're in a position where they're having to hire, either because they're reshaping, as Adam was saying, towards what they've got to do next, or because they just are labour and skills short broadly. So we've seen higher activity than we'd expect in a flat year. Revenue overall, particularly temp, up a bit to flat. Perm down maybe 20% because clients lean on temp when the economy's it's unpredictable. But that margin getting eaten up. If you're a temp recruiter and you're effectively loaning your clients money at 2% for a decade, and then suddenly the rates go up to 10%, that's going to eat bits of your business. So I think that toughness and hanging in there, it has been really important through this year. I think you've both been a bit too gloomy about next year. I think the forward signals for the UK, at least next year, are actually pretty positive. The Q1, I always like talking to Maritime UK about construction materials, and I'm going to tell you that for the last 7 weeks, construction materials have been flowing into the UK at a really high rate, which is a sense that there's some stuff coming. But I think Q1 next year feels a bit like this year. I think Q2 and Q3 we'll see a decent recovery. Of course, inflation's coming down a bit, but actually, I think I'm a great believer in the old animal spirit, and people can't be miserable for too long. So I'm saying to you that 2024 is a better year for agencies than 2023.
That's really good to hear, and I think agencies do feel positive. But to be honest with you, I think agencies are more agile. Because that's the nature of the game, and it's also your ability to pivot to different market sectors is key. And I hate to cite myself as an example here, but I was around during .com crash era, early 2000s, and I switched immediately to telecoms recruitment, and I had brilliant years. Even though obviously anybody stuck in .com world was like completely crushed, but it was not difficult to then pivot. Telecoms crashed. I just went did public sector NHS, and again had boom years. So I think the agility of agencies will basically tell us see them all right. What might be interesting is what sectors you think are going to be particularly okay, and which sectors you think are going to be particularly not okay. What's your general view on that, Neil?
So I think demand stays high in the sectors that where it has been high this year. So you're thinking logistics, you're thinking hospitality, you're thinking healthcare, you're thinking social care. The problem there is as growth returns, can you get the people? So there might be a driver of pay inflation there that will be problematic for client relationships for agencies, but the demand's there. It's can you service that demand at the margin that you need it to? On the other side, I think construction comes back. Engineering has been super strong this year. I think it stays strong. And I tell you why I think engineering stays strong in the UK, which is I think the UK has had a decade where it's been the country the G7 countries point at and go, that's not great. I suddenly think we look like the value bet in the G7 because look, I talk to a lot of international investors, but if you look at France post Macron, where the politics are in Germany, to a certain extent, apologies to our American colleagues, where the politics seem to be going in the United States. In the UK, we've got a general election, but Rishi Sunak stopped doing the mad stuff. Keir Starmer isn't Jeremy Corbyn. So internationally, I think there's a bit of I think Britain's in a better position to attract foreign investment now than it has been for maybe 5 to 7 years. And I think because of that, tradable sectors like engineering are going to be strong. And I'd expect to see, as IT recovers, London to look more attractive on IT as well.
Yeah.
Can I ask about,
go ahead.
From the agency perspective, I don't like instinctively, I would have thought 2024 might be quite a good year for agencies, even though it's described us as being doom and gloom. I would have thought so. But that's because, like, as companies start to hire more again, they're maybe less likely to immediately go into new contracts with RPOs or to start scaling up their talent acquisition teams again. And therefore, the flexibility of working with their agency suppliers might be quite attractive. So I wonder if there's historic evidence of coming out of bad years, agencies tend to have a good year, and they're one of the first things to start going well.
It's dead clear, Adam. First in, first out, right? And
Right.
the other thing about
Yeah.
the economy is you don't know you're having a recession until you're just coming out of it. So look at this morning's UK growth figures, which are, they're not technically a recession, but they're basically one.
Yeah.
I suspect that we'll see some of that upswing will be companies leaning on agency. The other thing is, I think there's a lot of learning to do on the temp side around MSP. So I'm going to be contentious here, right? The behavior of some MSPs this year has not only been unethical, it has been immoral, and it's driving a price discussion with clients that cannot be sustained. So one of the things that we as agencies and the REC are going to have to do is educate clients on how much things really cost, because what we've had is a load of MSPs in the temp market buying market share at a rate that can't really be serviceable, perhaps using some stuff in the supply chain that you'd rather not see, and then delivering a poor service. The client gets upset, bins the MSP, looks for the next thing, is looking for the professional service. I'm right with that idea that this is an in-person professional service to be successful, but the reference price has been set by that initial MSP. So there is something about, and it was interesting listening to, when do you give earlier on, when do you give ground on price? There is something here about agencies not being willing to do business just to do business in this market, because the labour market is tight enough that you can probably go and find better business. I think on MSP and RPO, there will need to be a next generation of that, and I think that's something that agencies should think about. What sort of MSP and RPO operators, one, they want to be if they're doing it, even if they're doing it mini, but secondly, do they want to work with? Because I suspect the era of the free and easy British labour market and labour market pretty much anywhere in West Europe is over, and I don't think clients get that yet. The British labour force is just smaller than it has been for 20 years, and it's going to get smaller still. And that's, in some ways, that's good news for recruiters, but it makes the job tough.
Yeah, very interesting. By the way, folks, people who didn't know, MSP stands for Managed Service Provider, basically someone who stands in between the customer and a bunch of recruitment suppliers, essentially. So very interesting. as well too. Neil, we're going to have to keep cracking through because I realize the time and I've got to let everyone get on with their Christmas shopping if you still have it to do. So Neil, wonderful to see you. Let me take the opportunity to wish you a very happy Christmas and a great new year. Hope you take a wonderful break. And we'll catch you early next year. Of course, we've got things to talk about, don't we? And we'll get you back on the show, of course.
Well, we're doing Brainfood live. Adam and I are doing it live together from Cologne next June.
Amazing. That's a football reference, by the way.
Yeah, wonderful.
Do you know what? We should definitely do that. All right, Neil, you take it easy, man. Good to see you. All right, we're going to have to keep cracking on. Emma, thank you for waiting patiently. We're going to bring you on ASAP. Sarah, I know you're waiting as well. I'll bring you on in a moment. Really interesting to hear. Always very good follow on Twitter. If you're still on Twitter or X as it is, Neil's one of the few people that's actually worth still following there because of the reports that RSC do. And also he is one of the upbeat folks that talk about sort of the recruiting side. Jesse Tinsley, another one on the agency side in the US, also very upbeat, but we need to have that balance. I know I'm pretty downbeat, so make sure you balance my negativity out with other people's positivity. Okay, there's Emma Mirrington. Emma, wonderful to see you. Can you introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure. Hi both. Hi everyone. My name's Emma. I'm managing director of the firm, and we are a membership training and consultancy business for the talent acquisition community.
Amazing. And more than just that, how many members have you got these days, Emma? Like how big are you guys?
Yeah, it's around 4,000 these days. So this is the paid membership, but we have a LinkedIn group as well, which is around 10,000. Still mainly focused on the UK, so 80% UK, but expanding internationally too, and that's a big focus for us next year.
No, that's amazing. So this is a person that's in touch with a lot of in-house recruiters, a lot of people in this market space. What's your take? What's the community been saying, or you've been seeing in 2023, Emma?
Sure. So echo a lot of what's been said before. So it has been a more challenging environment for people. And I think it is very sector specific, as we've talked about before. So I mentioned, construction's particularly challenging, but, pharma doing really well, defence is still really strong. So that's good to see. One of the interesting things that we've seen from a sort of TA team perspective is that I think 2023 for a lot of people has been about putting the foundations in place. So whether that's doing tech stack reviews, whether it's reviewing sort of EVPs, etc., that's been a focus. We've also seen people investing in specialist skills within their TA function. So in our annual report this year, we saw that employer branding resource had shot up from 43% to 50%, and talent intelligence, which was really interesting for me, was that last year only 12% of TA teams had a dedicated resource, and that shot up to 49% this year. I mean, in terms of the survey pool itself, it was around 500 who took part, but it's still, I think, an interesting reflection.
No, very good. By the way, please do read that report. I did share it in the newsletter, but Emma, feel free to share it in the chat whenever you're free to do that. Really interesting. One of the annual things that happen, and it's just very interesting to see what the appetite or the general direction of travel is for the industry. One thing you did say was interesting, this foundational work, which is stuff that if you're like hyper busy, you just don't have time basically to swap the wheels out when you're flying down the motorway at 100 miles an hour. You need to take time to stop. Well, okay, suddenly we have a year where there's been a downturn. We're not recruiting in the same frenetic manner. Now is maybe a good time to think, okay, do I need to upgrade an ATS? Do I need to review sort of fundamentally our recruiting processes? Tell us a little bit more about this, Emma. I mean, are you seeing that? How do you know that's true? Is it just a question you've asked the community, or are there other ways?
So it's a question that we've asked the community, and in terms, we always ask them what their strategic priorities are, etc. One area that people have been looking at from a foundations perspective is around internal mobility. So this has really sort of been a step change over the last few years. In 2021, the average ratio of external hiring to internal hiring was 70% external and 30% internal, and that's increased. So last year it rose to 33% internal, and this year it's actually 40% internal. And I think that's a reflection, as it's it's challenging to recruit externally. People can't necessarily recruit externally, so they're really focusing on their internal workforces and, you know, how do we identify potential, how do we do succession planning effectively. So I think that's something that's been really interesting to see, and I think that we'll continue to see that as a trend in 2024.
Yeah, I think so. And this is actually really important for people who are in the recruitment function, because we've always been externally facing. We kind of need to expand our scope, don't we? We can't just say, oh, it's not our job to look at internally. That is a population we need to care about when we're hiring for open vacancies.
Yeah, I think there was a LinkedIn piece of research recently that said it was 2.5 times more cost effective to develop your internal talent rather than recruit externally. So again, sort of LinkedIn, I think, feel that it's a sort of a focus for people over the next 5 years or so.
Emma, can I ask, my instinct earlier when I said a team of 50 people at the start of the year is probably, you know, that has maybe gone down to 35. They're not going up to 50 again. Am I wrong about that, or
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Right.
So I think we are going to see leaner TA teams. I don't think we're going to see huge growth next year, but people are just being asked to do more with less, which I think Doka mentioned earlier. So efficiency is a key focus. I think AI is really, I was actually surprised. So we've just done a piece of research into AI. And I was really surprised that only 22% of respondents are using it at an organisational level, and 73% aren't even planning to use it next year. So I think there's quite a lot of caution. So I think because everybody who attends Brainfood is quite future focused and sort of really sort of thinking ahead. And I was quite surprised, actually. I think a lot of our members are actually just going to sit back, wait and see, perhaps see what the early adopters are doing next year. And then I think we'll start to see more implementation from sort of 2025 and beyond.
I wonder what sectors I wonder what sectors they came from, these folks. Cause we talked about sector differences. You know, if you're hiring construction, I just wonder whether you might follow the vibe in construction. Maybe it's a little bit more less tech, if you like. Perhaps, you know, we need to roll back our tech enthusiasm a little bit and dive into some of these industries where there is a clear shortage of talent and therefore need for recruiters. Which is, you know, not what a lot of people want to do, you know. I mean, initially you might think your optimal is, oh, I want a Series B funded, this, that, the other, that's scaling up in this manner, give me this level of compensation. Well, maybe that type of company is no longer doing the things it was. Have a look at some big old construction companies, you know, lots of interesting things and recruitment going on there. Adam, sorry, I interrupted you.
That's all right. I was going to say, Emma, you're absolutely right. I think that the research that's generated and the opinions that are generated through Recruiting Brainfood are probably represent the early adopters, and so we should consider that. But point B of my question earlier about like the shape of recruiting teams, I also really believe there's probably going to be there are more career opportunities for people in talent acquisition than there ever have been. And I think the diversity of types of roles that you can do now is probably more broad than it has. Is that a trend that you would agree with?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's also reflected in some of the training needs that are coming through. So in the past, when with our training, traditionally people have very much focused on sort of the technical skills required in the teams, like sourcing or what have you. But this time around, when we look back over this year, our most popular training modules have been things like stakeholder management, change management, business partnering, and project management. So it's some of the softer skills that are needed because things are just sort of moving so rapidly. And I think the softer skills are going to be increasingly important as we move into next year too.
Very interesting. I think that's a very good signal, like where people are parking their L&D budgets, because I agree, sourcing, you know, for almost a decade, sourcing has been just the number one thing. But maybe the acquisition of candidates perhaps isn't as pressing as it was before. And secondly, maybe recruiters internally are starting to think, actually, we need to, you know, go beyond this narrow idea of just being a candidate finder, and start expanding scope internally to do other things of value within the company. Very, very good. Okay, Emma, listen, we've got to keep moving on. So I really wanted to give you more time. I'm so sorry we haven't been able to do that. But wonderful to see you as always, and I really hope you have I really do respect and admire everything you're doing with the firm. I look forward to seeing and supporting your success in 2024. Let's make sure we get together.
I'm back in January as well, aren't I? I'm looking into my crystal ball. So.
You are crystal balling it on the 12th. By the way, folks, if you didn't know, we're going to basically do the mirror version of these 4 shows. The 2 shows early next year, 5th and 12th, are forecasting forward what's happening in 2024. Emma's coming back for that. I do believe Neil might be as well. If he isn't, he's formally invited. And yeah, we've got another amazing lineup of people to help us commentate on that.
Let's bring Emma on first next time. You suffer from a lot of time blindness. Do you know that?
I do. The first person comes on, which are on. I think it lasts forever. So I'm pretty bad at this. But Emma, let me let you go. Wonderful to see you. You have a very good Christmas.
Thanks, Emma.
I'll see you next year. Okay. You are right, man. I mean, there need to be some sort of timekeeper on this. There's not a stop the clock thing, but we've got to bring Sarah on. Let's make sure Sarah can come on, at least give us the macro on the US, because we can't not have that. Yes. Oh yeah. By the way, follow the channel, folks, because we're going to keep rolling on. Next show after this is the 5th of January. So we've got a 2-week break before we go there.
There you go.
There she is.
Nice to see you, and Adam, nice to meet you.
Hi.
Have you never met Adam? I mean, I'm sure you've been on before.
I don't think I have. I think, Adam, I read about you, but yeah, we need to connect.
No worries. Well, listen, bringing you two together is an additional pleasure of mine. Sarah, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Really quickly, yeah. Most recently affiliated with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, VP of Economic Forecasting. I'm an applied economist. I love to write about the U.S. economy, jobs, AI. In my opinion, it's all over. So fun times.
Great to hear, Sarah. Do make sure you follow Sarah. She's also got a really cool newsletter that focuses on labor market economics. Do make sure you follow that and just subscribe to it. I think it comes out every week or something, doesn't it? I forget
once a month. I think I have like 5 editions now so far. So not
okay,
bad.
Once a month. That's literally not much in terms of consumption. So folks, go ahead and subscribe to it. Share the newsletter in the chat stream, Sarah, when you've got a sec. Okay, let's just have a quick look back. Whilst I've actually multitasked there, I've realized that's a terrible thing. But give us a look back on 2023 with regards to basically the labor market and the economy on the US side, Sarah.
Absolutely. I feel like 2023, honestly, was like ups and downs. The key word, in my opinion, was resilience, right? You saw the layoffs in January, right with the tech industry. We talked about inflation. That was happening the whole year. The Fed was increasing interest rates. We're almost down to that 2% target. You have still more job openings and workers available, but you still have people not wanting to work. There's the caregiving issue. There's the healthcare concerns. There's been articles that I've been reading this past week from the Wall Street Journal where they're saying you need to work more. Oh, but wait a minute, we don't have childcare. Oh, but we don't want to work. And then there's just so much of that that's happening. And I think most recently, some of the US data also is signaling that this pandemic that we've experienced, a few years ago, it's kind of actually giving the same numbers with respect to employment, with inflation, with economic growth. It was like this pandemic was a natural disaster to the data. But then if you look at how people are really behaving, I think there's still the challenges, right, of being motivated at work, coming to an organization where you feel respected, right, getting paid, dealing with other challenges outside of work. And I think it's hard to speak about that at work and be authentic. I think a lot of people are struggling with that. I know that people tell us to be your true self, but honestly, even as an economist, I find that to be sometimes a bit challenging too. But anyway, those are my thoughts initially.
No, very interesting, and there is a sense, isn't there? There's almost like an experts versus the people type of vibe, and that's true. I think I've felt that across the UK, probably elsewhere as well, where there's a sense that people are. They don't want to say people are lazy, but that's generally what they're saying. Like Jeremy Hunt very clearly, he's the Chancellor in the UK, said, yeah, people should be working harder. We had Liz Truss, our former Prime Minister, was essentially caught on a voice recording, saying more or less the same thing, which is let's hike up the interest rates, let's take the money out of the economy, let's basically bleed away all of the pandemic kind of welfare, which a lot of people saved money during that period. Let's not forget. We were basically paid a salary not to work for a long period of time. And in fact, we were not able to spend the money because we wouldn't go anywhere. So it was actually, we had a wealth accumulation period for a lot of people during the pandemic period. And, a cynical person might say, look, the purpose of ratcheting up the interest rates is to bleed down that money so that people will be motivated to work, i.e. need to work. But we're still wrestling with this. So you're still saying people are not yet that desperate, or they're resisting in some way. Sarah?
And also, well, I'll add a little bit to that, but no, people are obviously dealing with inflation. I mean, I teach on the side. I'm an economist and I'm side hustling myself. So what does that tell you? It's all real, right? So I think we're not out of the woods yet. I know the wages went up in the US, but I don't think people are still feeling that. It's just, you're looking at the prices of everything. But anyway, I did want to make a comment on timing with respect to generative AI. That's something obviously I've been following this past year. And Adam, I know you made some interesting comments too. I agree with all of that. I think that a lot of companies are still risk averse in terms of adopting that technology. But the funny thing is generative AI has always been there, right? If you look at like World War I, World War II, Department of Defense in the US. I mean, that's been there forever. And now I feel like it's become sexy. It's like, oh, wow, this is such an interesting topic. And me as an economist, I'm always creating models. I'm always looking at the data. And I think that's something that's still important to talk about, the ethics of the data. How is that being constructed? Do we have representative samples? What's the use case of generative AI? I'm a big fan of Google Bard. I don't know about any of you all. Just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, Google Bard, I think, for people who don't know, is probably the maybe not the number 2, but it's basically Google's version of ChatGPT. But I think it's still pretty much a minority player in the UK in different places. So, but yeah, no question, people are using it using AI in general at an individual experimenter kind of way. Although I don't think that many people have operationalized it in certainly not departmental or company level at this stage. It's going to wait, I think, until a product comes out to do that. This is what Adam's trying to do. You're going to see Microsoft and other companies just rolling AI into people, whether you like it or not. And I think that's probably how most of us will start interacting with it. But yeah, it's an interesting type of situation. It's an additional wrinkle into all of the macroeconomic stuff, because it does have an impact on how many people you need to do the job, for instance, or what even job performance looks like now that we have AI in the scene. I mean, it's got me thinking about how you manage performance now. If you're managing someone, you wanted this output, that's great. But what if this person is able to do this output in like a 10th of the time? Guess what? As a manager, you're going to be tempted to raise the bar in terms of what it is. You're not just going to accept that.
Good performers are always punished. I totally get it, because productivity is that it's output over input. So it's like, oh damn, there it goes. The other thing I'll say is for this past year, the resilience topic, I was thinking about how is AI impacting people's ability, right, to find jobs, but also what are the skills that they should develop, right? What are the hard skills? What are the soft skills? I still think the hard skills are the math, the statistics, right? Data science. And the soft skills, again, to me, are more about communication. If you can talk to somebody, a lay person, about technical information and communicate that in a way that people understand, it's a game changer. That's why I teach economics. That is why. It's not because I'm an economist. I just like to teach it. So I think that's been helpful. So all of you, teach an econ class. That's my advice to the listeners today. Teach a recruitment class. There you go.
Can I ask, is there any, again, instinctively, completely ignorant comment here, but are we as a species getting less resilient? Because that's what my instinct would tell me.
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I feel like everything is so easy for many of us in places of privilege. I mean, I speak as an American, of course, sitting here in Chicago right now. But then you look at across the pond, across the world, right? There's unfortunately, places of global conflict, and you see those folks just, wow, their resilience is off the charts. So it's, it's just so mixed.
I think resilience can be trained. but it can also be detrained. So in other words, if you don't expose yourself to adversity, you soft. I mean, everyone knows that. You need to regularly expose yourself to adversity in a controlled environment, in a controlled way, and that's basically how you build resilience. We talked about this during COVID, actually, when everyone was shocked, it was terrible. Then we realized actually a lot of us were able to cope with it, and it's basically a kind of just the muscle memory of surprising things that happen. Can you deal with a random surprise and still be productive, or can you reduce the amount of time when you're literally throwing your arms in the air and thinking, oh my god? Let's face it, we all do that. But if you can shrink that down from 3 days to like 10 minutes, guess what? You're going to be more resilient. That's basically what resilience is. You have a short window where you're bedazzled by an unexpected situation. So I think you can train it. I don't know how to train it. I wouldn't call myself particularly resilient per se. Certainly, I've been blessed not to have like genuine adversity come across my life to date. Touch wood. Hopefully, I don't get to see it. But yeah, I think we can get to the point where basically, we could develop a bit more resilience internally. Adam, you're not happy?
No, that's not true. You are very resilient. You are extremely resilient. You run it. You're a solopreneur who's gone through a heck of a lot of different business challenges over the last few years that have come to you from nothing to do with you, with COVID and other things like that. So you're very, very resilient. And Sarah, I'm one of those massive place of privilege, so I completely get that. So I did caveat what I said with the point of view of ignorance, but and your point about conflict is really important as well, because I think about it as somebody in the United Kingdom. I think about this in the context of like people who went through World War I and World War II. So like my grandparents' generation, and that's why I'm just that's the comparison I was at. So
absolutely.
Folks, listen, we are like well over time. So Sarah, I'm really sorry. I really wanted to get you on earlier, but obviously time management is going to be a New Year's resolution for Hung Lee. Needs to do a much better version of this. But let me let you go. I hope you have a very happy holiday and a great new year. I don't know whether you get the chance to come over to the UK again, but if you do let me know. Be cool to catch up. And yeah, maybe I'll get to go stateside. I'm actually in Toronto, not next year. It's not too far away from Chicago, is it? But yeah, I'll drop you a line, see whether you can hop across the border or whatnot.
I'll get my passport. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me let you go. You have a very good day, Sarah.
Good to see you both. Take care. Bye bye.
Cool. All right. That's about it. We have to finish here. Adam, thanks for hanging on. Folks, everybody, thank you for watching Brainfood Live on Air. Thank you for supporting the show all year. Some of us have been here week in, week out. I can see the names there: Steve Jewell, Tom Bolt, Rob Walker. A lot of you are just basically relentlessly supporting this. So I do thank you all for it. It makes a huge difference. I think it's important we keep these conversations going because I think we got to get it out. We can't just keep it internally. So, folks, let me take the time to wish everyone a very happy holidays, great Christmas, Happy New Year. We're back on the 5th of January. We'll see you there for the forecast. Have a good evening. Thanks for watching, everybody. That's it, mate.
Right. Can we quickly talk about Day of Reckoning?
Yeah. So, it's going to be massive, obviously.
I've never seen anything like it. Have you?
I actually hope Wilder and AJ both get knocked out. I've got to be honest. I'm tired of them. It's like watching the same old people it's been decades worth, and they still haven't got in the ring. It's like, okay, fine. Let's have them both sparked out. It's done. With next generation come in, but
this is the thing though. It's the hey, who wants to talk about boxing? Come on.
I tell you what, the Angela talk about boxing is a big fan.
So absolutely, get Angela on, definitely.
I tell you something though. Let me just. There's a way I can unlock this.
Dubois against Big Baby Miller is
Dubois
Angela's saying. Dubois is getting knocked out, did you say?
No. Baby Miller's knocked out round one, no doubt. Not viable.
He's 100 pounds more than Dubois.
There's exactly the reason. He's completely unfit.
Like, talking of resilience, Dubois has arguably quit twice.
He did fracture his orbital bone, mate. I don't think you can continue if that's the situation, to be honest.
Didn't fracture his orbital bone against Usyk.
He beat Usyk,
right.
didn't he? I mean, more or less. But anyway, listen, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think Frank Sanchez is going to beat Junior Fa. I think Makhmedov is going to beat Kabayel. Angela said that she reckons Lyndon Arthur's got a chance against Bivol, and that's no chance.
Angela is in the towel after getting out of the shower.
Yeah, so
that's no impediment for anybody for you not to come on the show.
We've had people in a towel on before. We have.
The precedent's been set. I've been in a dressing gown before. That's no problem. Come on in. No, it's okay.
No, Miller, I think has got a very, very good chance of beating Dubois. Dubois got no engine either. If Dubois is going to turn it into a 4-round fight, and the chances of him knocking out Miller in 4 rounds is very low. Yeah, no, Miller's never been knocked out. Absolutely correct.
All right.
He's won he's 23-0. We're talking about boxing, Lee.
Round one. Okay, what about AJ? He's going to beat Wallin. He's this other guy is like literally he's not in there. I mean,
oh no, Wallin's good.
It's a points win, mate. Boring points win.
It is a boring point. It's a boring points win. Otto Wallin's good though. I mean, he's only ever been beaten by Fury, and that was really close.
AJ has actually beaten him twice in the amateurs, I think. Not to say that means too much, but it's I think 2 wins in a row is significant. So anyway, what about Wilder, man? I mean, is he going to windmill the dude out? Probably will be. Won't he?
Yeah, again, like same thing again. Joseph Parker's got to turn it into a 4-round fight. If he sticks it on Wilder like up close for 4 rounds on the inside, he's got a chance. But the longer it goes, the longer there is the chance of just getting that right hand right in the face.
Yeah, I mean, again, both of them are just like past it now. I mean, they're getting to the point where...
No. Joseph Parker's getting better and better, I think.
No, I'm talking about AJ and Wilder. Like they've peaked and they're on their way. When you slide at heavyweight, I think you slide fast. So I think they're both.
I mean, why are you saying that about Wilder? He's only really had 1 fight in the last 2 years. It was a 1-round knockout of Felanius.
He's about 37, mate. He's actually had
he's 38.
He's not had insignificant beatings, mate. If you remember the Ortiz fight, he was getting pounded. He's been punched in the head a lot. So
yes, absolutely. I mean, the Fury fights.
Yeah.
Like Fury, the second Fury fight was like an absolute beatdown. The third Fury fight was a beatdown. They were both battered, but I mean, Fury deserved to win, of course. But the second one, Wilder got like it was like a 14-year-old getting smashed up by an 18-year-old.
Yeah. So I've realized you